Chenier is basically a sandy ridge that's covered in oak trees. So Chenier is Cajun French for oak grove. And there's only actually 3 locations in the world of Cheniers. Louisiana, there's one in South America off the Amazon, and Australia. I'd never got enough of it in undergrad, so I decided to take it on as my master's final project in graduate school, and really didn't know where it was going to go. You're being bombarded with sensory experiences when you go out there, and was trying to figure out how you draw and map experience and then how that translates into architecture. The first time I went out there, I think, was in 2008. It was my second year of undergrad. It was still an independent study course. That was the first time that any of the students had been out there, and we were just kind of amazed. Chenier, in my opinion, is just magical.
February 5th, 2009. We are leaving Intercoastal City, Maxie Pierce's Landing, in the Maine Parish Sheriff's boat with Deputy Breeze at the helm, heading to Chenier by Freshwater Bayou. We're currently in the Intercoastal Waterway, and we're going to go to the Freshwater Bayou and go to Chenier and dock at the McElhinney Landing. And we're on a 3-day excursion.
Onizim is the reason this whole thing started. He was teaching at UL, and he had grown up going and visiting Chenier, so his family is somehow tied to the island. He grew up visiting it, and like everyone else that's visited it, fell in love with it and wanted to expose students to it. So he got just really excited, wanted to do something different. Landscape interventions and sketching and just being kind of immersed in that place to kind of see what happened. He never had an official plan.
This is one of our students, Sarah. You probably have some imagery of. This is the book that she put together for her project. We used to read Annie Dillard. We'd have the students read some of her things and kind of respond to it through the sort of understanding of literature and being very graphic about observation, and then kind of throwing things like Rising Tide and John McPhee into it. And it was quite a good blend. Chris Taylor, who's another guy who I met through Lori Riker, he runs something called the Land Arts of the American West, and he takes his students and they camp on the road for the whole semester, seeing like Spiral Jetty and Double Negative and a lot of these major earthworks, and they basically at the end of the semester put projects together, but the whole thing is on the road camping, urban camping. And that was quite a wonderful experience to see. They were kind of a nice influence on what we're doing as well. Chris Taylor. My name is Onizim Mouton, and I'm a former architecture professor from the University of Louisiana Lafayette. My personal connection with Chenier is that I started going there when I was a kid with my grandfather, who raised me as his son. And so I just grew up there as a kid, going fishing and camping and hiking and thinking that was the greatest place on earth. And over time began to learn the history of the place through their eyes and their stories. And then later on, I would go with my students when I was a professor and take them there to kind of introduce them to this landscape and this experience. right here would be where the steps would have started and stepped up to the porch right here. So this would have been the porch right here, and then this is like right behind the porch. The porch kind of protruded out from the main building, and the main building was kind of like a long shotgun house. Well, right here would have been the edge of the main building, and you can see how the land kind of takes a divot, and basically it was a drip line of where the water fell off of the roof's edge that made this sort of divot in the earth right, kind of like a ditch, a little drainage ditch. So we'd have been inside the hotel right here.
We had one lady who came, this family brought their daughter on a stretcher, and they just had a little light cloth hanging over her, and they stayed over there about, I think it was the first time they probably stayed about 2 weeks. They'd take the cot and they'd put it in the water because you couldn't touch her with anything. She was so sore, everywhere she was sore. So they'd put it in the water. And they did that. They'd do that 2 or 3 times a day, put her in the water. And she got well, and she got married, and she had 2 children. We met her after, and I don't remember her name right now, but she was from around Youngsville.
They come for the mud baths, and they come to be buried in the sand, and then they pour the salt water over.
Tell us how it was done, and we'll do it.
You dig like a ditch, your limp, and you lay down in there and leave your head propped up on the back. And then you take the shell and put it over it after you sit in there, pour that water over you, and you just...
With that disappearing land, you're losing a culture and a way of life that once it's gone, I don't know if you could get it back. Keeping the history and the memory of the people and the culture and lifestyles that happen down there alive. It's amazing.
Mindfulness versus mindlessness is a concept that we borrowed from Lori Riker in the remote studio. And what we would do is project that to the students and basically try to bring to their awareness that, we can be very mindful about a lot of things that we do, and we kind of tend to associate that is sort of the correct response and behavior for being an architect and being a designer. The mindlessness part is something that kind of gets pushed aside and seeming that, this is not the place where productivity happens. But as I think that we all kind of came to embrace and understand, is that the mindless part, the part about not necessarily looking for a pragmatic solution to something, but by being immersed in the landscape and sort of letting nature take its course, so to speak, and the things that happen when you're not searching for a very rational answer about something, like how do you let the subconsciousness kind of come into play?
idea of control of nature in this battle of these two forces, and just that you need the Mississippi River to create the land, but at the same time you want to keep it away from the establishment that you have said. So it's like just this battle, and there's really no hard edge. I found this site that I thought it spoke about that idea, just that these two sides coming over the sandbar. It depends when you come, you might be able to cross when it's dry, but now it's really starting to just cross over, so I thought that would add to the project.
It's the sort of relationship of having both of these things, the mindfulness and the mindlessness at work. And I think we all agree that you can't do both at the same time. And so the mindlessness part, a lot of it was kind of reserved for the excursions and to not necessarily be the editor when we were doing the creating. It's like, go out there, let's see what responds, and we're going to come back to the studio and we're going to think about it as architects. When we're on the site and on the excursion, we are going to kind of use the tools of architecture, like drawing and sections and plans and space making and sense of quality of space. But at the same time, we're going to try to not be so judgmental right away on the spot. We're going to try to leave an opportunity for the unknown or the unexpected to come into play. And that's where the mindlessness part happens. And so it became a huge part of what we're trying to instill. That's why we needed the 3 days on the excursion minimum to kind of get out there and make something happen. One of the reasons that taking students to the Chenier is so important is that architecture really is about space and place. We were looking for a way to show the students how to become aware of your sense of place. And if you can kind of define it or understand a sense of place, then maybe you'll be open to other senses of place. Like, how do you kind of teach that? How do you refine that when there is seemingly no sense of place, architecturally speaking or spatially speaking? And so I think that by bringing the students into this landscaping, having them see some sort of like universal truth or sense of place in the landscape, somehow by seeing the universe, you see yourself. And that by going to these places and kind of finding yourself, do you in some way see the universe? And I think that that's really was probably at the core of why is it so important to go out there and be in this place to think about architecture.
We're trying to figure out what our role is out here. It kind of is more of like a human experience view of architecture versus like building architecture. More of just like
one with the landscape.
Right, like humans inhabiting a space.
Every time I come out here, I think of how I just, from the boat ride to here, change completely. Like starting with whenever I'm on the boat and the wind's blowing in my hair and I start to not even care about what I look like anymore, and starts forcing me to think about like simple things like my mom and like my friends from back home.